You get ready and you discover yourself with
Right.
joy. Two,
Right.
you get set and you design your landscape with joy. And then three, you go ahead and deliver your goals with joy as well.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to have you on the podcast. And my starting question will be because I was going through Keen Insight website and I really got excited after looking at your ready, set, go process that you have. I think it will be a great starting point for our conversation if you don't mind explaining how you help leaders with your ready, set, go process.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, it took me some time over my 25 years of experience, plus years of experience, working in corporate America and also on the side doing things that I really enjoy, which for me is dance. And then as I got older, got involved in a lot of other things. So with having something that I really enjoy, I was able to create this Ready, Set, Go framework based on different aspects of my life coming together. So, yes, my name is Nicole Valen. I'm the founder and CEO of Keen Insights. And while I was climbing the corporate ladder, like I said before, I was also an NFL cheerleader and an NBA dancer and assistant coach eventually. And I realized that I was in a lot of various toxic environments, um, toxic teams, and I needed to fuel my positivity and energy internally so that I could show up as my best self at work and work with teams and be collaborative and deliver on our goals. So the first step is to get ready. So you discover yourself, and you do this by discovering your joy. So thinking about what are the things that you enjoy doing, and sometimes this is a difficult question to answer for leaders. So sometimes I'll have them go back and ask themselves, what did you like to do when you were younger? And then the floodgates opens, and then they start understanding what things they enjoy and how they can engage in that to re-energize themselves. And then step two is they take that joy, fuel themselves with it, and they go into the workplace and they get set, or they even at home they get set and they design for joy.
Right.
This is going in, working with your teams as a leader, and designing the way that you work together, designing your culture, designing the way you innovate in a way that is, yes, productive and high performance, but it's also enjoyable at the same time. And then go is then you just can go and deliver on your goals. You bring everyone together and you work alongside it. So as I'm saying what the steps are, it's you get ready and you discover yourself with
Right.
joy. Two,
Right.
you get set and you design your landscape with joy. And then three, you go ahead and deliver your goals with joy as well.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing this. So it sounds like the foundation for this is self-discovery or self-awareness. And I think this is so important because it is oftenly underestimated, especially from leaders' perspective that people transition into leadership role. And what typically happening is, especially with a lot of technology organizations, that they promote people purely on the basis of their technical skill sets or technical accomplishments. But leadership is an entirely different role. When people step into that role, they are not ready for the challenges and they go into burnout stage very quickly. So I think what you are mentioning about the ready phase of your framework, self-awareness and self-discovery is so important. So for leaders who are in the leadership position and they have never taken time for self-discovery or self-awareness, what would be your recommendation to them, how they can really understand the importance of this thing, and how they can get started on understanding their own self better?
Yeah, so you hit it very well. You know, mostly when we're talking about transformation and leaders getting elevated to higher positions, we always have conversations about the systems, the integration, the vendors that they're working with. And what I've seen working inside organizations is that most failures aren't the technical side of things, right? Because that's where the leaders have the expertise. Now we need to look at the human side of things, because what got you to the point of being a leader is not going to keep you there, right? Because leaders are making these decisions under this high pressure, especially in tech, and they're often really depleted. And that actually derails the execution of what they're supposed to be doing. So the work that I do is working inside the organizations during these high pressure transformations, and we're looking at the performance of the people, right? Because sometimes the performance of the people and the systems, they collide, and then we start seeing the failure points that are happening with the human, not so much with the technical aspects of things, right? So, this is why transformation kind of fails, and even when the technology is working, because it's the human intelligence alongside the AI, right? The HI and the AI kind of have to work together. So when we're looking at this transformation, we have to look at the leaders, look at things from the top, and how are we equipping leaders from a human side of things so that they have everything internally to go ahead and meet the performance that they have designed for them. So a lot of the ways to do that is to stabilize their energy. And yes, we can stabilize our energy when things are calm. But the practice is, how do we stabilize our energy when the pressure is hitting us, right? And how do we make sure that the leader is reliable and trustworthy, right? So when we think about the computer, we want our computer to be reliable, but we also want the human aspect of things to be reliable. And we don't want the performance to degrade. We want it to elevate, actually.
Thank you. So, Nicole, and I'm speaking from my own experience, I see that there's a lot of focus going on building the resilient systems. So, everyone wants their software systems or their whatever they're building to be resilient. If one cloud goes down, the system should still be able to function and all those things. But I realize that I feel that there is not enough focus on building the resilient humans. I think if we start focusing on building the resilient humans, resilient leaders, or resilient teams, I think then there will be potential to accomplish so much more in what we are doing at our workplaces. So, if you speak to us from a perspective that a management of a company, how can they start uh, investing more in building the resilient leadership, the resilience skill set inside the leadership? What should be the steps to start doing that?
Well, the first step is to acknowledge it, to acknowledge that the need is there, right? Because so if we're so focused on the technology, sometimes we're not even thinking about the human side of things. So if we acknowledge that, we still need to take care of our humans. And
Yeah,
as a leader, we first start modeling the way by taking care of ourselves. And that's
right.
where the three-step model comes in. So the leader will look at what brings them joy, what re-energizes them, so they can come in and be that role model. And then sharing that with the team and allowing space for team members that are a part of the organization to take steps to re-energize themselves so they're not on the go all the time. So it's one of awareness of the leader, two, the leader practicing taking care of themselves and coming fully energized, And then three, allowing space for the team members to do the same. And when you see when that's working collectively in the culture of an organization, that's when you see more innovation, more opportunities, more able to meet the clients and your customers' needs because it's all coming from this positive energy that's fueling the elevation of the whole entire team and the organization.
Right. So, as part of this process, as part of your ready, set, go process, uh, do you also work with your participants on habit building part as well, as part of this framework? Uh, let's say if someone is enrolled into your coaching, do you also help them build a certain pattern of their day-to-day life that can help them become high performer, help them become more resilient, and help them handle stress better?
Yes, that's so important because as human beings, we're all different, right? So it's really honing in and tailoring it to each specific person. So someone could say they love running, like running miles and miles in marathons. That would not bring me joy, but that would bring someone else joy. And I would talk about what brings me joy. So we first start at that particular place, and many times when working together, when working with an individual or a team or an organization, one of the first things that we do is doing the what's your sphere of resilience assessment. So what that assessment does is it looks at your capacity of resilience on 8 different domains. So your financial resilience, your emotional resilience, your social resilience, and looking at all of those areas, internal and external resilience, and seeing where the gaps are and seeing where your strengths are. And then with advising, we can narrow in on what the gaps are so we can elevate that,
Right.
and then also look at the strengths because many times those strengths, the leader can utilize those strengths to positively influence their team. And so we want to look at that overall.
Right.
One other thing I wanted to add too is, which is really exciting, is I work with leaders in understanding what brings them joy. So we created a joy menu, right? So each person can kind of think about what brings them joy. They can list it on their joy menu. And anytime they're going through a change, a stressor, or a challenge, and when you're in that state, you usually can't think of what to do, right? But if you have a joy menu that you can see, it's either in your agenda book, on your phone, somewhere visible, all you have to do is pick one thing to do. And there could
Right.
be those things on the menu could be at different levels. So if you only have 30 seconds, uh, you could do some deep breathing. If you have 15 minutes, you can take a coffee or a tea break. If you have 30 minutes, you can go for a walk. So there are all of these different things that individual leaders and teams can come together and say, this is what we're going to put on our menu. Anytime we need a break, this is what we're going to do to rejuvenate and fuel ourselves to keep going.
Perfect. Sounds great. So you mentioned about teams as well, and as I got sense that you not only work with individuals, but you also will work with teams and groups as well. So how do you ensure, or if you have to build a psychological safety inside a team without losing the accountability portion, what are the what are your recommendation if a team is trying to bring in psychological safety but also don't want to lose the accountability part as well? So how to address this challenge?
Oh, I love this question because when you're thinking about psychological safety and accountability, they go hand in hand. We would want the accountability there because that's kind of like the boundaries, right? And when you have accountability, everything's transparent. People know what their roles are. They know their responsibilities, right?
Right.
And they have a sense of leadership for themselves that they know that this is the task, this is their responsibility that they're over. And then the psychological safety comes in with how we relate to each other as human beings. How are we going, what tone are we using when we're speaking to each other? When there's a conflict, how do we resolve conflict in our team? So it's a lot about respect, how we communicate, and how we problem solve together. And a lot of times, the accountability, if that is already, it's kind of like accountability is like a contract. If there's a disagreement, all you have to do is go look back at that contract to figure out, okay, who's responsible for what? Are we doing what we said we would do? And if we're not, let's take a look at it and see, do we need to redesign things a little bit different, and make sure that we're all psychologically safe while we're accountable for our roles?
Right. Makes sense. So I want to ask you about emotional intelligence. It's getting a lot of popularity, a lot of mentions everywhere, and especially during this evolving world of technology and artificial intelligence, I think emotional intelligence is becoming more and more important, especially for leaders. What are your advices for folks who are trying to develop themselves more into emotionally intelligent leaders? What they should be doing in their day-to-day routines to accomplish this or reach there?
Yeah, and we kind of talked about it a little bit already, where self awareness is the key. So being able to realize when they're not emotionally regulating themselves, when they're in a pressured situation, and already having preconceived steps and guides for themselves to do to prevent it, from
Right.
escalating, or what to do when they realize that they're it's escalating internally. What can they do to take a break so that they can get back to being the leader that will help their team run effectively. So it's so interesting. I went to a conference a couple years back, and I was, it was during a break. It was snack time, and I went to a table. It was a standing table with another CEO, and I was telling him about the work that I do, and he said, "Don't tell anyone. I can tell you guys because I'm not going to say his name." But he said, "I have an empathy coach," and he whispered it to me, almost to say a little bit embarrassed, right? But understanding the need for it because he was so driven just to the metrics, the ROI, what we need to do. And CEOs have that pressure, and even more now in today's society, what's going on in our world, but almost ashamed, but also kind of like he was thinking, I'm on the cutting edge. I'm doing what's best for me. I'm doing what's best for my company. I'm doing what's best for my team. And he recognized that. So that takes a
Right.
lot of courage to one, do it, and then two, share it with another CEO at that same time. So I thought that was wonderful. So we may need additional support as leaders because it's very lonely. We always hear it's lonely at the top. So we need as
Yeah.
much support as we can get.
Absolutely, absolutely, Nicole. I have one last question for you, and I think it's very important from my perspective. For someone who is listening to us and they feel that their life is very overwhelming for them, especially their work life, what
Mhm.
advice would you give them to calm them down and give them a sense that there is a lot of help, there is a lot of coaching available around that they can avail. So for somebody who feels that they are really drowning in this thankless job of being a leader, so what advice you would give them?
Yes, I would advise them to definitely seek out the help, whether it's coaching, whether it's advising, whether it's being a part of a community with other CEOs and leaders, because when we go in these communities, 9 times out of 10, you find out that you're not alone, that other
Absolutely.
leaders are going through the same energy depletion, right? Having to make the same tough decisions in these high pressured industries, like similar to the industry of your leaders on this podcast here today. So I
Right.
would remind them that they're not alone and they're actually listening to this podcast and getting up to date on how they can improve their human intelligence. They're ahead of the curve. Not everyone is thinking about that. They're all thinking about AI. They're all thinking about technology. So you're already ahead of the curve by just making sure that you are surrounding yourself with like-minded people and getting the coaching and then the advisory that you need outside of technology, because remember,
Right.
we're humans first.